Hello, friends, and welcome back to the next episode of the Enough Mom podcast. This is episode 119. You don't need to be organized. You just need a system. I'm your host, Jennifer Bryant, and I'm coming back to you to talk about the little things that tend to make us feel like we're still not enough. The day-to-day grind, the comments that we cannot keep off of our mind, the little things that someone said once a long time ago that we can't seem to let go of. You know, sometimes we can get down on ourselves for not being an organized person, quote unquote, when I think we really need to get down to the idea of what organized means, because people organize in all kinds of ways. But today I wanted to just come into this topic, of course, with more grace, right? Because that's where I try to end up in these episodes. And again, if you were sitting here in front of me talking, I would want to take your hands and hold them and ask you, honey, what is it that's making you feel like you're not enough? Not enough for your kids, not enough for your home life, for your spouse. I don't know. I don't know what you're measuring yourself up to, but you do need to know that you have a friend here on the other side. On the other side of this screen, wherever you're watching, I just need you to know that there are women out there who aren't holding you to some ridiculous high standard. And I'm coming to you with all the empathy in the world because I've been there. I've been behind the negative thoughts that keep me stuck, the hanging on to someone else or waiting for someone else to come rescue me and tell me what to do. I mean, I still tend to want to ask my therapist, just tell me what to do. I pray all the time, God, please just show me, help me understand these things, because I hate feeling confused. I hate feeling like someone is holding something back from me, holding back a piece of information that I should know by now. Does that feeling feel familiar? Do you walk through life feeling like I should know this by now? If I was a good enough mom or a good enough person, I would have this figured out or have it together. Yeah, I know. I know what that feels like. And why I want to sort of untangle these thoughts on a podcast like this is because I not only have I had them too, but I also know and I have hope that things will get better once you get down to the root of where they're coming from. Okay. I love studying the behavioral sciences. Okay. I love all things human behavior. I really enjoy trying my best to understand the deeper things of our mind, of our heart, knowing that those two pathways tend to start in different places sometimes, knowing that they're all built in every one of us from a different place. We all have different upbringings and different life experiences that shape how we believe ourselves and what we believe about ourselves, right? So let's get into it. Another episode of the Enough Mom podcast. Today we're talking about you don't need to be organized, because you know what? You just need a better system. Here we go. What I've been learning as a mother, and now as I coach mothers, is that our enoughness has nothing to do with what's happening on the outside of us. It has nothing to do with how clean the house is, how well behaved our kids are, or whether we remembered to thaw the chicken for dinner. Enoughness, real, lasting enoughness, is an inside decision. It's the decision that you make about your own self-worth. It's the willingness to say, I am worth building something for. I am worth the effort that it takes to grow. So when you feel like people are coming against you, maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's your relatives, or even your own kids, you don't have to continually think that their behavior is happening to you. You don't have to stand for the way that some people treat you, right? You get to speak up about that. But if you're starting from a place where you don't value yourself very much to begin with, it's going to be a harder climb. It's going to take a little bit longer to just detangle a lot of these things that have been built into our psyche and built into our whole belief about ourselves, in order to answer that other person and say, no, I don't think so. That's not going to happen. Or you don't get to talk to me like that. Being able to stand up for yourself is what I'm talking about. And that can only happen when you first know how valuable you are and you act from that place instead of from a place of constant defensiveness, fighting back. Maybe you learn to do that as a young person, but truly more of it has to do with what you choose to already believe about yourself. So here at Enough Mom, we are choosing to believe that we already have enough of what it takes to really value ourselves so that we can move forward and make confident decisions from there. In this episode, we're going to talk about systems. We're going to get practical because underneath all of this truth, building systems for your life is one of the most powerful declarations of self-worth that a mother can make. One of my favorite books on productivity is called Atomic Habits, written by James Clear. And he says, you don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. See, we can set all these goals, right? Peaceful bedtimes, good morning routine, wake up times, an organized schedule. But honestly, without a system underneath, then we're just white knuckling it. And when we drop the ball, we don't tend to blame the missing system. We blame ourselves, right? We say, ugh, I'm not enough. I can't do this. I suck at this, whatever comes to mind first. But that was probably never the problem. The problem wasn't you. It was just the structure that you're missing that you haven't built yet under the actual task list or routines. So let's talk about how to build that structure. Now, a structured system, meaning the way that you choose to do something consistently, takes time to build. It takes decisiveness on your part. You might have to draw it out or write it down. I love drawing my plans on whiteboards, right? Or little, pieces of paper, but I love a good picture or a diagram or something. So it takes intentionality to put something together so that you can look at it and refer back to it. But then you sort of have to transition into it. Now, I know this because I've lived it many, many, many times. And I know that I haven't been pushed to come up with a system until the mess piles up and something needs to be done about it, or somebody gets fed up, or a fight breaks out or something. Let me share my story about the dishes with you, because this might come up again later in other interviews and things. I tell the story a lot about the early years of our marriage. It was all about the dishes. The dishes were our main point of contention because my husband did not like to see them piled up. They're continuously piled up. Like I left them from the day before, the night before, and I just was not prioritizing doing dishes in my mind. It kind of wasn't that way growing up at home. It was kind of like whoever got to them whenever they got to them. And that's when it happened. I mean, I needed to develop a system as somebody who's newly married, newly sharing a space with their spouse. And I didn't give mind to that. I guess maybe I thought in my 20-something-year-old mind that he would take care of it, or we would talk about it at some point. But it just never occurred to me that was something important until he started to voice that it bothered him. But where my mind went with that immediately was shame. I was ashamed that I was disappointing my new husband. This wasn't just about having clean dishes. This was clearly about me. He was clearly attacking my character for not being domestic enough or something, whatever story I told myself at that point. But I could not get it together. I would cry about the fact that I was disappointing him. And what does that sound like? What kind of relationship does that sound like that I had built up in my head? Did you guess it? I was treating him like he was my dad. I was responding to him as if he was a parent and not my spouse. Someone had to do something about the dishes. Someone had to make a change to their lives. We needed to have a conversation. Before we got married, we didn't have a conversation about roles and who would do what around the house, and things like that. It was, he was working, I was working, and it's just not a language that we had developed together yet. And what I brought into this marriage was this fear of disappointing people. I also probably had this authority weirdness or complex or something. But I know that what I immediately did was put him in the role of my father instead of just taking responsibility and deciding to do a new thing differently and figure it out, right? I chose to take it personally rather than not taking it personally and just saying, okay, this is a simple problem that needs to be solved. Let's set up a system. Let's say I cook and you clean. Or let's say another example of a system would be, I am going to keep the dishes clean by the end of every day. So no matter how I'm feeling, I'm going to decide to do dishes before I go to bed, And for the most part now, that's the system I live with. I mean, not every day, but I have kids in the house who can help now too. But it's a decision that has to be made to solve the problem instead of making it something personal and then writing a whole story around that. So when I say somebody needed to do something, at that point, that somebody was me. I needed to decide that, look, I'm an adult now. I am married now. I'm sharing a life with someone now. And nobody's going to make me do anything but me. Nobody is coming to save me. I moved 3,000 miles away from my family to an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. I had to figure things out myself. And for young adults, friends, that is a really good thing. Young adults do not need to be coddled by their families in order to figure things out. It's often the resistance and the tension that creates resilience in a young person. And I'm really glad now that I had that I had to just figure it out myself. And eventually I found mentors and other women at church and, older folks who could encourage me and lead me when my parents weren't around to do that with me. But I had to make adult choices, But if I let the voices of anger and resentment control my narrative, it would have been all about me, what he was doing to me, and very little about taking responsibility. I mean, we tended to have similar fights throughout our first few years of marriage because the communication wasn't there yet. When I stopped waiting and I started taking ownership, my personal shame lifted. That personal struggle around, I must not be doing this right, I'm not a good wife, I feel sorry for me, that all kind of went away when I just jumped in and was like, no, this has to be done because this is what we do for our home. And it was worth the effort because you know what? The dishes were never the issue. My own belief was the issue. And actually taking time to put a system into place built my own confidence. And it built confidence in my husband that, okay, now I have a wife who's not, being an adolescent. Now I have a wife who's actually willing to talk with me about this and not blame me for stuff. Now I have a wife who we can talk about sharing equal chores and it not be such a big deal. But for years, I felt like I was fighting against the same battle because I wasn't willing to look outside of myself and say, look, this is how this is making me feel. And then he can respond to me and go, well, I didn't mean to make you feel that way. And we can come to a different decision. It's all about what you choose to believe about yourself, friends. Can you do a little bit more? Can you make changes in your current way of life in order to find a better system for doing things instead of just falling to the level of nothing, As James Clear says, we fall to the level of our systems because when we don't have one, we're just going to keep going in a loop because there's no foundation there. But when we create a structure for making decisions and a structure for what we're going to believe about ourselves when the tough times come or the criticism comes, then we have the structure to look at. It's almost like a container, like building your own container that holds the truth. And if the truth is, if I want a clean kitchen, then I'm going to start putting things away now so that I'm not tired later, and so on and so on and so on. I'm going to give you some more examples of systems that you can set up within your home for different age kids. So we're going to get to that in just a second. You can do this too, Mama. You can build systems that work for your life. And that is part of learning self-governance, which is another form of leadership. When I was waiting for my husband to give me parameters, I was unconsciously treating him like a parent when I needed to step up and take control of my own household. See, I actually had more control than I thought I had. I was already enough in that situation, but I wasn't allowing myself to take hold of it. And when you make that mindset shift, that is less about organization and more about personal enoughness. That is about deciding that you are worth leading your own life. I was recently listening to an episode of the Jefferson Fisher podcast. It was the one where he was interviewing author Robert Greene, who wrote the book The 48 Laws of Power, among others, but that's one of his most well-known books. Their episode was called Why Nice People Lose Their Power and How to Fix It. And something Robert Greene said really stopped me. His research affirms that healthy power, not manipulation, not manipulative power, which often leads to control over others, right? So healthy power needs to be actively developed in our lives. So when we give our power away, we believe that we have no control over our time and over our space. Mama, when you look around at the chaos that may be your home right now, and you think to yourself, I can't do anything about this, that is not a fact. That is a belief, and that belief is stealing your power. But when you choose to create a system, even a small one, you are making a declaration about your self-worth. You're saying, my time matters. My energy matters. I have agency over how this household runs. And that is an act of power. That is resilience being built in real time. This is a pattern I tend to see in my work doing coaching with mothers. The women who start building even one small system, like a morning routine, for example, or a meal plan or a weekly reset, they don't just get more organized. They start to stand taller. They get really confident in themselves. They start to trust themselves more. And not because their circumstances changed. They still have young kids flinging stuff here and there and everywhere, but because their belief about themselves changed. I help mothers to take action when they don't think that they can take action. They stopped measuring their enoughness. What I want you to understand is that you can stop measuring your enoughness by the state of the house and start measuring it by the courage that it took to try. Building systems is not about perfection. It's about proving to yourself through action that you are valuable and worth creating space for. And I need to say something here that might be hard to hear at first, but I promise it comes from a place of deep love. When adults grow up with parents who did not create systems or a way to care for their children's needs, and I'm not talking about perfection, I'm talking about basic, consistent structures of care. Those kids often carry that into adulthood, and they end up in cycles of self-loathing, low self-worth, and a deep sense of abandonment. And it really wasn't because their parents didn't love them. They just didn't care for them in a way that met their needs and built that trusting relationship. And I see it all the time. I see it in the eyes of adults who are trying so hard to sometimes overly meet their kids' needs. And then they get anxious about, I wasn't doing that good enough because they were still upset or they were still crying. And, they're trying to meet the need of the little boy or the little girl inside them. I think we can underestimate sometimes how systems, regular ways of caring for your children, regular routines where children can know what to expect, which actually builds the trust and security in young children. When that is not in place, when systems are not present or things are very erratic or very unpredictable, it leaves young children with this sense of, guess I have to do this myself. I guess I have to take care of this myself. And either you become incredibly self-reliant or you become someone who just doesn't, really care, and they don't expect much from people, and therefore they don't expect much of themselves. So it's different little cycles that can get stirred up in us. And if you're ever wondering why maybe your partner or your sibling or your friend or someone is struggling with those kinds of trust issues, it may have to do with how their parents showed up for them. So I only bring that up not as a way to throw out some weird pop internet psychology or something, but I'm a pattern person. I notice patterns and things. And so when I'm telling you, based on what I've studied on early childhood development, the family systems that I see when I ran the preschool, when I taught kids, when I lead groups at church even, the patterns that tend to show up the most are the abandonment patterns. And why I'm even talking about systems with you today is because I want you to be aware as an adult now that you're an adult. I want you to be aware as a parent of the long-term effects that our action and that our inaction can have on our kids. And, awareness is the first step. You don't need to do something perfectly once you're aware of it, and then you try to put it into practice. It's okay that it doesn't go perfectly at first, but at least you're trying. At least you're trying not to have the laundry pile up anymore. I know that in our first apartment, the laundry piled up a lot because I didn't have a consistent system. I just chose to be overwhelmed by what I was looking at. And I chose to go lay down instead, or I chose to just sit and play with the babies because that was easier. Real growth is not going to happen until you challenge yourself to do something a little bit more difficult, a little bit different than how you've done it before. And you will be surprised at what you find, because taking action on things actually most of the time isn't as hard as our brain thinks it's going to be. Remember, our brain is a great predictor. Our brain isn't an awesome truth teller. It just tries to predict danger. And if it's predicting an uncomfortable action, like, oh, I'm gonna get up and do the laundry and get up and do the dishes, your brain's always going to fight against that. So why not just be the leader of your own brain? This is what I'm talking about when I talk about self-governance. When we develop a healthy sense of personal power and self-governance to move forward, it's really little actions on top of little actions on top of little actions. And you can do that. You can. But you have to do it. No one's going to do it for you, And gosh, I still have to remind myself of those little things every time I don't feel like recording a podcast, every time I don't feel like doing my dishes, I have to remind myself that it's me that I'm building up. I'm not doing it for anyone else but me. My family gets to benefit from the good choices I make for myself, but it all has to come from valuing myself first. And I want that for you too, Mama. I want you to believe that valuing yourself is going to result in so many good things. And maybe you're discovering areas in which you haven't been valuing yourself as much, or thinking, oh, I thought I did. I thought I was good in that department. But, sometimes our actions show forth, what our beliefs are already telling us. Please believe today, Mama, that the systems that you create now for your kids are the systems that are going to help your kids feel safe and cared for and secure. And they are going to learn how to move forward with their own systems, how to set these things up for their lives, whether it's doing schoolwork, whether it's keeping their room clean, whether it's treating someone else's space with kindness, They start with themselves, and they start by watching you do it with yourself as well. When you build systems for your family, you're telling your children, I see you, your needs matter, and I'm building something reliable for you. You're not just organizing a home, you're breaking a cycle. You're rewriting what enoughness looks like for the next generation. If you're a mom who's just thinking about how to put a system together from scratch, you've never had to do it before, of course you're going to be new to it. Of course you're not going to know how to do it well right away, but I'm going to give you some Kickstarter ideas, okay? Then you can start using these ideas to start making small little decisions. Remember, if you don't know how to do this yet, it does not mean that you're not enough. It just means that nobody has taught you how, or you've not seen it modeled very well yet, okay? So be kind to yourself as we go through these examples. For babies and toddlers, have a diaper bag station that is always restocked. Now, I know that for some families, having a diaper bag or diaper changing station in your home could be in multiple places in the house, right? It's just for convenience, especially if you have an upstairs, downstairs home. So have regular stations that you restock at regular intervals. Like I always restock this at the end of the night, or at the end of, on Wednesdays or on Sundays or whatever, okay? And put that on your calendar, like when to restock things. Nap time, feed time, play time with babies and toddlers, okay? This needs to become a rhythm. Babies have to know when to expect, even though they can't tell time yet, but they've got to have a regular rhythm of downtime, of eat time, of play time. So these are things that have to be scheduled or placed at certain times of the day. If they're not at particular times, then it's, after we eat, then we blank. After we play, then we, now after we eat, then we nap, after we take a bath, then mom puts on my jammies to go to sleep. It has to be an expectation that you build into the rhythm of your family in this young child's life. Another example is to have a landing pad, a place where you have your grab and go essentials. Maybe it's a place by the door. A lot of times families will use like console table or like a bookshelf, like a flat surface bookshelf closest to the door, where you always put your keys down, your wallet down, your purse down. You always have your essentials there so that you're not always running around trying to look for your essentials. Have a place that is designated as a landing place. And it can be out of anything. It doesn't have to be like an official entryway table. You don't have to use furniture as it was designed to be used at all. Just like we use baskets for all kinds of things, for our fruit, for our shoes, for our purses, for, grocery items. Choose something that's going to serve as a place where you regularly keep things. Now, the elementary age stages is when your kids start going to school. Visuals are so important. Visuals, especially with like pictures on them. If you can cut out a piece of paper or laminate it or put a little sticky thing or a magnet or a Velcro thing on it, whatever. There's a reason why preschool and kindergarten classrooms look the way they do. I spent my student teaching months in many young children classrooms, and visuals are huge because before kids can actually read effectively, they need to sense the passing of time or a way to tell what they're supposed to be doing next by looking at visuals. So having things like a morning checklist, like this is what we do before we leave for school or before we start school, and then an afternoon checklist. This is what we do when we get home from school. Did I put my bag down? Did I give my teacher notes to my mom? Did I empty my lunch box? Things where kids can have an expected system of routine to follow when they get home. It helps them to know where to put their stuff, how to take care of their things, what to do next, how not to forget school life once they get home. And those things need to be visual for both you and your children, because you're helping them to take ownership over their lives. The next thing that will really help you as well as your children is a weekly meal planning system, like a meal calendar or something. And we all know that families, we tend to eat the same 10 things on rotation every month, don't we? But it'll help you to plan your grocery time, and it'll give the kids a fun sense of involvement in mealtime, especially if you're fighting with picky eaters or something. You ask them, what do you like? What would you like mom to have for you for dinner? Tell me your favorite meals, even if they say dino nuggies and chicken nuggets and macaroni and cheese and stuff. Okay, let them list some of those things. And then you say, okay, mommy and daddy love broccoli and we love rice. And so how can we make meals together? You get them in on it, and then shop for those things. You can more or less negotiate mealtime in a way that's fun, but what you're actually doing is training them to take ownership over what the family does together. Another thing you can have for elementary age kids is a homework and backpack station. Now, this can be in the same place where they put their after school things down, but accountability to homework and maybe checklists that the teachers send home, or work that they needed to do that day, because if they homeschool, right, they need to have completed a certain amount of things. Even if they're not doing every subject every day, then they need to show you for accountability for themselves and their schedule that they have a place where mom and you are going to look at it together, instead of everything always being hidden in folders and out of sight, out of mind kind of thing, right? You don't have to keep everything in a folder. You can have them put it out in front of everyone, and then you can talk through it together. Now, for tweens and teens, tweens I consider 10, 11 years old, up to teenage years. I think it's important to have a shared family calendar. Okay, I'm kind of laughing at myself when I talk about the calendar thing, because I have been known to have about 4 different calendars all around my house. I'm looking at an annual calendar right now where all the months of the year are in front of me. And I need that for future planning for family stuff, vacations, my work, and things. And then I had a monthly calendar on the fridge. And this is really before the kids had their own devices where they can keep their own personal calendar on there. So I needed to have everything in front of them, right? Because my Google Calendar is all color coded on my phone, and they couldn't always get into my phone or on a computer to check it. So I had to keep it outside of that and keep it visual. So again, back to the visuals, because the visual serves as the shared communication piece. And I highly, highly recommend that, because people get frustrated when they don't know what's going on, right? At any age, any age. Start them young and train them to understand this is how we plan ahead, how we plan our lives ahead, so that we don't miss things, so that we don't have constant conflicts with what so-and-so is doing, and so-and-so's over there, and so-and-so needs to be there. You need to have a common visual calendar that everyone can reference. And that is whether it's digital or physical. The next thing I recommend is weekly family meetings to keep track of your schedules. Now, we haven't always been great at this. So this is in concept the ideal, right? As often as you all can get together and sit down together, have meals. Again, we don't always get to do that because dad works hours that are very irregular, restaurant hours, okay? But when we do get together, we do talk. And even if dad's not here, I'll talk with the kids about, okay, what does your week look like? Or here, let me show you your school schedule, or you tell me how far you've gotten in whatever subject. And this is for, again, remember, older kids who you're trying to get them to take ownership over their schedule and their task lists and all those things. So the point is communication. Just a regular communication with your teens and tweens is so important at this age. And if you haven't been doing this already, I happened to start when the kids were a lot younger, had them start washing their own clothes, doing folding and putting away their own laundry. They've been doing that since they were like 6 or 7. But if you start giving that job to them as a teenager, which is the perfect age at least to start that, then you have to teach them to take responsibility for their own systems and build their own routine of, when am I going to do my laundry? When am I going to make sure I have clothes to wear because mom's not doing it anymore? And you can choose not to do their laundry. Doesn't that sound exciting? You can have them develop their own systems. So if you're just getting started and you want to start implementing something you haven't tried before, just pick one system at a time. Give yourself a couple of weeks and see how it's going. Adjust as needed. You get to decide. That's the whole point. You get to decide what your family needs and how your house is going to be run, and you get to implement it. My closing comments are going to be around the power of your community. I feel like I talk about this in almost every episode, how important having a community is. And this is one of the huge reasons why. Because if you don't know what you don't know, you won't know who to ask or who to talk to about it. But when you start allowing people into your life, into your spaces, no matter how messy you think they are, honestly, then you not only invite authenticity into your life, but you open yourself up for a world of possibility from other mothers who have been there, done that, who can recognize when you're struggling and can offer helpful, practical advice. We can't learn things in a vacuum, right? We can't learn things out of thin air. But if we're not willing to look outside of ourselves for the answers, then we won't give ourselves a chance to take on new knowledge, new experiences, and new understanding. But when you surround yourself with mothers who want to be curious with you and who actually have a growth mindset and want to learn to do things better, then you all lift each other up. You start to share ideas about how to clean this and that, or how to create cute little cubbies, maybe, and how to do it on a budget. Not everyone needs to spend a ton of money at Pottery Barn in order to have a cute, sweet little space. I go to Goodwill a lot. I get a lot of things in this office from Goodwill or Facebook Marketplace because I have an idea of the aesthetic that I'm trying to create, right? I know what I love. And what I love doesn't always need to come from a retail store. I'm looking at these amazing pieces I use for my tea set and tea party sometimes that I got at an antique store for like $5, So with ideas that come into play when you are in community, you're going to start to feel like less of a failure in the organization department and more of a, wow, I get to learn how to do cool things. And I got that idea from my friend. You don't need to do it alone. You really don't. And honestly, Mama, it takes courage to let other people see you in the middle of a mess, but you get to build your confidence by taking imperfect action toward that. And lastly, your calling. You're called to be a mom who sees the needs of her children and comes up with creative solutions for how to meet that. We're creative beings. We are created to be creative problem solvers. Let's just put it that way, okay? So your calling as a mom is not just limited to, the resources you have on hand. It's the inventiveness that your brain gets to come up with when you dedicate yourself to learning more and to figuring things out. And you get to do that one small step at a time. So do it in community, don't do it alone, and believe that you have the ability to create amazing systems. Remember, this is beyond organization, but you can create amazing systems because there is no education like self-education, as our friend Charlotte Mason has said. We get to make these creative choices for our families, but also for ourselves because it builds our own confidence and resilience. Remember, your enoughness was never determined by your circumstances. It was never about the dishes or the laundry or the packed lunches. Enoughness is a decision you make about your own worth. And building a system is what that looks like when you start to take action. You are not behind. You are not failing. You are not powerless. You are a mother who is choosing to grow, and that makes you more than enough. We'll see you next time.